This is the Redmi 14C, one of Xiaomi's latest additions to their entry-level lineup. This phone is supposed to be a replacement for the Redmi 13C that was supposedly a budget phone killer for last year and even up until this year. But is the Redmi 14C really a game changer or just another forgettable entry? Well, let's find out. The first thing I noticed about this device is the processor. Xiaomi decided to switch to a MediaTek G81, which doesn't look like much of an upgrade considering the Redmi 13C was powered by a MediaTek G85. Even though it's a much older chipset, it still has slightly better performance compared to the G81. On paper, the Redmi 14C has similar specifications to the Redmi 13C, aside a few slight changes that were made. Let's get a quick rundown on the specs before we really get into it. The Redmi 14C comes packing a 6.88-inch LCD display, MediaTek Helio G81 Ultra processor, a 120Hz refresh rate with a 50 megapixel lens, a 5160 mAh battery capacity with 18 watts charging, and HyperOS based on Android 14. It still comes in the same variant as its predecessor with storage options of 4, 6 or 8 gig of RAM and 128 gig or 256 gig of internal storage space, with the base model costing around 135,000 naira and the 256 gig costing around 175,000 naira. These specs are actually not so bad for a budget entry-level device, but the main question here should be how this device actually performs compared to other budget entry-level devices in the market right now, because sometimes specs on paper say a completely different thing from the device's performance. Let's start with the design. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about this design, especially with this really large circular camera thing going on the back. One wouldn't think we would go from the design on the 13C to this, but I'm guessing this is the design smartphone companies are sticking with this year. But in my opinion, the 13C looked much better. Besides this circular camera thing going on in the back, the design of this phone actually looks very sleek and clean. This comes in 4 different colors with different material build. The blue, which I have here, has a plastic back, green with a matte leather finish, and the black and purple with plastic backs. Also stay away from the black color except you enjoy the sight of fingerprint smudges. Now let's talk about how Xiaomi has decided to stick with this U-shaped notch for their entry-level devices instead of giving us a punch hole cutout like other brands do these days. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying this display is bad, I'm just saying it would have looked much better with a punch hole cutout. But that's by the way. We now get a transparent TPU case in the box. This is the first time for any Redmi C series, I guess Xiaomi listed. We get a larger 6.88 720p display that isn't bad. I know some people might feel different about having a larger display, or rather I personally don't like large displays. I would have preferred if it were smaller, but if you fall under the category that enjoy having a larger display, this should fit perfectly into your everyday use. It is perfect for consuming media content, binge watching your favorite show, and even surfing the net, and it also displays decent colors. I noticed this doesn't have the auto brightness option, so sometimes it just slides all the way down when using certain apps. My outdoor experience using this device under direct sunlight was fair, only that I had to manually adjust the screen brightness at intervals. Now, for the first time on this series, we have a volume boost of 150%. Not like this makes much difference in the sound quality, as we only have a single downward speaker on this device, plus I can't tell when it's at the max 150 volume boost. The 5160 mAh battery capacity is definitely an upgrade from the 5000 mAh on the Redmi 13C. But in truth, using a 5000 mAh battery and a 5160 mAh will make more difference when it comes to battery life. The Redmi 14C battery is good and can last you at least 24 hours on fair usage. Battery life in my experience is good. Another thing I don't quite get is this device has a support for 18 watts charging, but comes with a 33 watts charger in the box. I'm not sure why, but my guess is this could be under marketing stunt, or they probably just had a bunch of 33 watts chargers lying around and decided to be generous with it. Either ways, I think it's a plus. It should go from 0 to 50% in 45 minutes, and that would be around 90 minutes of charge time. Now let's talk about the camera specifications. At first glance, this device might look like it has a quad camera setup on the rear, but it's just a 50 megapixel lens plus a QVGA lens, which has little or no impact on the camera performance. I also noticed the 2 megapixel macro lens on the 13C has been removed, but that should not be much of a big deal. We also get an upgraded 13 megapixel selfie camera lens. Both cameras can capture pretty impressive shots in good lighting. Something you should know is this camera would not always give you the best pictures at all times. When taking pictures in low lights, the images will definitely appear grainy. So in order to get the best out of this camera, you need good lighting and stable hands. Drop a comment and let me know what you think about the quality of these images. Out of the box, this supports Android 14 and Xiaomi's HyperOS pre-installed. Kudos to Xiaomi for not asking us to install the HyperOS after buying or wait a few months to get an update. Although this is a stripped down version of the HyperOS, because there are just some HyperOS features you don't find on this series, like the control center and the split screen option. Also, the IR blaster has been removed and the second space option also didn't make its way to this model. Now back to the processor. You might be thinking, why a G81 after a G85? Now here's why I think it could possibly be because they are trying to cut costs, because using a slightly powerful or similar chipset might help them keep the price down. Honestly speaking, this isn't an upgrade, but I wouldn't call it a downgrade either. The difference in performance between these and the G85 is minimal and might not have much noticeable difference, but it's not a deal breaker for most daily tasks. It still gets the job done. Remember I talked about an improved 120Hz on this device that can be manually selected and it says up to 120Hz. Even though I'm not sure what up to 120Hz means, but the only time this device clocks a 120Hz refresh rate is in the settings app, 90 on the home screen and 60 on apps like TikTok and YouTube. So yeah, 120Hz. Honestly, I think a 1080p and a 90Hz refresh rate would have been the much needed upgrade that sets the Redmi 14C apart from other devices in its category. But I guess we just have to make do with 720p and up to 120Hz refresh rates. I also noticed some apps might take a few more seconds to launch, and when switching between apps during heavy multitasking, which happens on entry-level devices, and also maybe because I got one with a 4GB of RAM. To get a better performance of this device, I'll suggest you go for one with at least 6GB of RAM. For casual gaming, this handles those without much stress. If you're getting this device as a gaming device, you'll probably be disappointed. More demanding games are playable on low graphics settings as long as you don't expect too much. Don't forget it's a budget and entry level device. Also, for a much better gaming experience, I'll suggest you go with a 6GB or 8GB of RAM if you can. But if you'll be using this for minimal tasks, the 4GB of RAM should do. And yes, it has an external storage slot. So I think that's basically it on the Redmi 14C. If you're upgrading from a much more older budget device, I'm sure you'd appreciate the larger display and overall decent package this device offers. But if you already have the Redmi 13C, stick with it. Or maybe go for the Redmi 13 or the Note series if you're really looking for an upgrade. So what do you think? Did Xiaomi make the right call with these subtle changes on the Redmi 14C? Or were you hoping for a more significant improvement? Drop your thoughts below in the comment section, and as always, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, share, and turn on post notifications so you don't miss out on any of my videos, and I'll see you guys on the next one.